They wore the uniform of a nation that enslaved them. They fought for a freedom they had never known, and when they fell in battle, their sacrifice was erased from history. Beneath American soil lie the bodies of 180,000 black soldiers who fought in the Civil War. Most of their names were never recorded, their stories never told. Until now, the first American to die for independence was a black man. Crispus Attucks fell in the Boston Massacre, 1770. 5,000 black soldiers fought in the Revolutionary War. Then America thanked them by building a nation on their backs. By 1860, 4 million human beings were legal property, worth more than all American railroads, factories, and banks combined. $3.5 billion in today's money. But in the shadows, a revolution was forming. Not with speeches or petitions. With action. When the Civil War erupted in 1861, black men rushed to enlist. They were turned away. The Union Army's official position was clear: this was a white man's war. President Lincoln himself declared, "If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it." But he underestimated two things: the Confederacy's strength, and the determination of men with nothing left to lose. By 1862, the Union was losing 54,000 casualties. Morale shattered. And then, a quiet order changed everything. May 22, 1863. The Bureau of Colored Troops was born. Not as an act of justice. As an act of desperation. They came in thousands. Farmers. Blacksmiths. Escaped slaves with scars on their backs. Free men with everything to lose. They knew the stakes. White soldiers, $13 per month. Black soldiers, $10. With $3 deducted for clothing. White soldiers received their uniforms free. The 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment refused to accept their wages for 18 months. Fighting without pay. Because accepting less meant accepting inequality. Corporal James Henry Gooding wrote to President Lincoln, "We have done a soldier's duty. Why can't we have a soldier's pay?" He would die in a Confederate prison before seeing justice. Because for black soldiers, capture meant something worse than prison. The Confederacy refused to recognize them as soldiers. They were classified as escaped property, subject to execution or re-enslavement on sight. April 12, 1864. Fort Pillow, Tennessee. A Union garrison, half of them black soldiers. Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest surrounded the fort with 1,500 men. The fort fell within hours. Then the killing began. Witnesses reported soldiers shot while surrendering. Wounded men burned alive in their tents. Of 300 black soldiers, only 60 survived. The Confederates suffered 14 deaths. Nathan Bedford Forrest would later found the Ku Klux Klan. The massacre was not investigated. No one was charged. And black soldiers learned they were fighting two wars. One against the Confederacy. One against history itself. July 18, 1863. Battery Wagner. An impregnable Confederate fortress guarding Charleston. 600 soldiers of the 54th Massachusetts prepared to charge across open beach into cannon fire. Their commander, Colonel Robert Gould Shaw, 25 years old, white, from Boston aristocracy. He volunteered to lead the assault. His father wrote him, "You have taken the name of the regiment from what it was, a byword of contempt, and made it one of honor." They charged into hell. Musket fire. Grape shot. Hand grenades. Colonel Shaw reached the parapet. He raised his sword and shouted forward, "54th." A bullet struck his heart. He fell into the fort. 272 casualties. 40% of the regiment. The fort held. But something greater was won. Northern newspapers exploded with coverage. The New York Tribune, "It is not too much to say that if this Massachusetts 54th had faltered when its trial came, 200,000 colored troops for whom it was a pioneer would never have been put into the field." The Confederates buried Shaw in a mass grave with his black soldiers, intending it as an insult. His father refused to reclaim the body. He wrote, "We hold that a soldier's most appropriate burial place is on the field where he has fallen." History remembers Harriet Tubman as the conductor of the Underground Railroad. It forgets she was a Union spy, a scout, and the first woman in American history to lead a military assault. June 2, 1863. Tubman guided 3 gunboats up South Carolina's Combahee River. She had scouted Confederate positions for weeks. Under her command, Union forces destroyed 9 plantations and liberated 756 slaves. Cathay Williams disguised herself as a man to join the 38th Infantry. She served 2 years before her secret was discovered. The only documented female Buffalo soldier in history. How many others? We will never know. Their names were erased twice. Once for being black. Once for being women. July 30, 1864. Petersburg, Virginia. Union forces detonated 4 tons of gunpowder beneath Confederate lines. The explosion created a crater 170 feet long, 60 feet wide, 30 feet deep. Black troops of the 4th Division had trained for weeks to lead the assault. They were ready. Then, at the last moment, their commander was replaced. White officers, chosen by lottery, led the charge instead. White troops charged directly into the crater and became trapped. Confederate forces surrounded the pit and fired down. When black troops finally advanced to rescue them, Confederate soldiers shouted, "Kill the N.S. Take the white men prisoner." 3,900 Union casualties. Black troops suffered the highest percentage of deaths. They fought not just to escape the crater, but to save the white soldiers who had taken their place. The Union Court of Inquiry blamed the black troops for the disaster. History would take a century to correct the lie. Vicksburg, Nashville, Richmond. Black soldiers fought in 449 battles. 25 earned the Medal of Honor. 40,000 died. Sergeant William Carney, shot 4 times at Battery Wagner, refused to let the flag touch the ground. First black soldier to earn the Medal of Honor. He wouldn't receive it for 37 years. April 9, 1865. General Lee surrendered. The war was over. Black soldiers had turned the tide. And then, America did what it does best. It forgot. Within 12 years, Reconstruction ended. The troops withdrew. Terror returned. The soldiers who had fought to end slavery watched their children grow up under Jim Crow. School textbooks taught children that slavery was benevolent. That black soldiers were cowards. That the Confederacy fought for states' rights, not slavery. Between 1900 and 1930, America erected 700 Confederate monuments. Monuments to black soldiers? Fewer than 20. It took until 2016 for America to open a national museum dedicated to African American history. 151 years after the war ended. Today, historians race against time. Searching archives. Digitizing letters. Recovering names. 25,000 black soldiers are still listed as unknown. In unmarked graves across the South, they still rest. Scientists use DNA testing to identify remains. To give them names. To bring them home. Families discover ancestors they never knew existed. Letters surface. Photographs. Proof that they mattered. That they fought. That they were here. Their legacy lives in every black American who has worn the uniform since. 2.5 million have served. Fighting for a country still learning to recognize their worth. Look at their faces again. These are not victims. These are not symbols. These are men who stared into the abyss and chose courage over survival. They knew their sacrifice might be forgotten. They fought anyway. They knew the nation might betray them. They bled anyway. They knew history might lie about them. They stood anyway. The question is not why they fought. The question is, what will we do with the freedom they died for? 180,000 soldiers. 40,000 dead. 25,000 still unnamed. This is their story. Our debt. America's reckoning. To learn more about efforts to identify unknown black Civil War soldiers, visit the African American Civil War Museum. To find out if your ancestors served, search the National Archives database. Their chains are shattered. Their stories must live.